Hey, it's Tito, Jeff Thitoff. Welcome into the Buckeye Blitz on FanStream Sports, powered by DSP Media. By the way, download the FanStream Sports app. It's free for Apple and Android users. Get round-the-clock programming from all of our... We have so many great shows we have right now, ones we're adding as well. So make sure you go check those out. But this is the Buckeye Blitz, FanStream Sports app, FanStreamSports.com. Also, you can go there. Follow me on the X. I am at That Happens. Let's get into this week and what's going on in college football, and specifically with the Ohio State Buckeyes. First, let's talk about the Indiana game. Ohio State wins that one 38-15. And look, I've been ripping Curt Cignetti ever since that game. I did on my radio show on 97.1 The Fan here in Columbus, but I was disappointed. Curt Cignetti talked a lot of junk leading into this game. He had the one press conference, He had the appearance at an Indiana game, I think, when a basketball game after he was announced as a hire, where he said Purdue sucks. And they said, you know what? So does Michigan. Michigan sucks. And Ohio State sucks. And he said that. And then all this talk leading into the game, there were questions about Indiana's schedule, which is awful. We'll talk about that in a moment. But he kept talking about how that was not, Indiana's better than people think or whatever. And so I didn't like all the trash talk he did going into this game. And then Ohio State's up 3 scores, and it's in the third quarter. Indiana started off great, by the way. Ohio State had the normal slow start. Indiana started off great. They stopped Ohio State 3 and out, and then went down and scored a touchdown. They were in great shape. It was looking good for Indiana. Ohio State was up 3 scores in the third quarter, about midway through the third quarter. Indiana had 4th and 11 on the Ohio State 42-yard line. They chose to, first they looked like they were going to go for it. They called timeout. They choose to punt. I think at that point is when they conceded the game. At that point, they decided, we just don't want to get blown out. Cignetti did not want to get blown out, so he punted and tried to pin Ohio State deep. And then when Indiana got the ball in the fourth quarter, still down 3 scores, about 7 minutes left, I think, in the game, 8 minutes left in the game, they start running the ball. Not trying to win. If you're trying to win, you're throwing the ball. You're aggressively attacking the end zone. And Cignetti instead chose to keep running the ball. They ended up having a 17-play drive. And they scored and made the 2-point conversion with just under 2 minutes left. So Cignetti knew midway through the third quarter, his team could not compete with Ohio State. That was cowardly, in my opinion. Indiana, if you're going to come out here and say, oh, we're this, Ohio State sucks, Michigan sucks, all these things you're going to say. You're going to say all those things, and then when you're down 3 scores in the third quarter, you got a chance to do something, and you punt. Then you've got the ball again, you run. Now, they did pass eventually. All Cignetti was trying to do, at that point, he's down 31-7. All he's trying to do is not lose 45-7. That's all he's doing. So he did not trust his offense enough. And you know what? I didn't either. I thought Ohio State, if they would have gone the route that I'm suggesting, I think Ohio State could have won 45-7, 52-7 maybe. But my problem is Cignetti talking all of that trash and sticking his chest out about Indiana football. And then in the third quarter, halfway through, he backs off. This is the analogy I made on the radio as well. That Indiana was like, if you remember the early Tyson days, Mike Tyson, you would see guys come in to fight Tyson that were like 17-0, 19-0, 20-0, whatever. And they had fought all these, not great fighters. And before the fight, they're like, "Oh yeah, I know I can beat Mike. Mike's never been hit. Whatever." They say they talk all the trash they want to talk, leading into a fight against a young Mike Tyson. Then they go into the fight and they clinch, and they try not to get knocked out. That's what Curt Cignetti did with Indiana against Ohio State. This top 5 matchup, he tried not to get knocked out. Early on, I think he did certainly try to win, but after that, like midway through the third quarter, All he was trying to do then was hold on for dear life. And Ohio State, after Indiana scored, went for two, 31-15. Ohio State gets the long run from TreVeyon Henderson, and he slides down inside the 5-yard line. And then Ohio State decides to run the ball with Will Howard and try to score the touchdown. I love the fact they did it. It was petty. No doubt it was 100% petty. And Ryan Day said afterward that TreVeyon Henderson did the right thing by sliding down. But I'm glad that Ryan Day tried to put another touchdown on the board against Indiana. And he said afterward, look, he was asked, why'd you do it? It's Ohio State. I want people to know who we are. This is Ohio State. We are who we are. I'm paraphrasing there. But he absolutely did it because Cignetti had talked all the trash he had talked coming into the game. And honestly, I don't think Indiana is worthy of the playoffs right now. I know they came in, and we'll talk about the rankings in a moment, but I don't think they are worthy of a playoff berth. By the way, Ohio State this year, they started off slowly like they always do. They trailed against Akron. They trailed against Marshall. They trailed against, what else? Penn State. They trailed against Northwestern. They trailed against these teams early in the game. Akron, there was a 3-and-out for Ohio State to start the game, and then Akron went down and got a field goal to go up 3-0. Marshall ran down the field. All these things. What I try to say to everybody who gets panicked about Ohio State starts, yes, I'm with you. I wish they started better. Offensively, I wish they started better. In this game, 3-and-out, Indiana drives down the field and scores. I got it. I wish it was different. But it might be by design. Ohio State is so good at making adjustments. And they didn't blitz much in the first quarter against Indiana. Then they blitzed a lot after that and had great success. I think they're trying to just kind of feel things out and see what Indiana's doing, see what the opponent's doing. They do it in all these games. Just so you know, Ohio State this year, they've outscored opponents 135-9 in the third quarter. 135-9 in the third quarter. Ohio State this year in the second half, they've allowed just 34 points. Total. We're 11 games in. They have allowed 34 total points in the second half. So think about that. Now, all the talk about Indiana and their schedule. And I remember ESPN on game day, I think it was ESPN, when the reporter asked Cignetti, hey, what about the narrative, about the fact you guys haven't played anybody? He said, you can take that narrative and shove it up your you-know-what. Great. Indiana this year has played nobody except Ohio State. Meanwhile, Purdue, let's do this. Let's look at Purdue's schedule. Purdue played Notre Dame. They played at Wisconsin, at Illinois. They hosted Oregon, at Ohio State, hosted Penn State. Those were all games that Purdue had to play this year. Now, Purdue's not good. Purdue's 1-10. But those are all games they had to play this year. Again, Notre Dame, who is ranked very highly in the CFP, which we'll talk about in a moment. Illinois, also ranked in the CFP. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, also at Wisconsin. That's a tough schedule for Purdue. Indiana has played Ohio State, and that's it. That's all they played. They had one shot to make a statement. One shot, and they blew it. New CFP rankings are out. And no surprise as far as how the top of it goes. Ohio State is 2 behind Oregon. We will hopefully get to see the two of them play in the Big Ten championship game. But you also got, Penn State's up there as well. Indiana did drop to 10. And look, Indiana's playing Purdue this week. They should roll Purdue. They will get in the playoff. If they roll Purdue, they'll get in the playoff. If they lose Purdue, they won't. As much as I'm not sitting here thinking they'll lose to Purdue, but I don't think that they are playoff caliber football team. I think they've benefited from, and all the people want to say, well, you can't blame Indiana. They played the schedule in front of them. That's fine. You can't penalize them because of what they've had. Fine. The conference set the conference schedule. That's what happened. Indiana got to avoid Oregon and Penn State this season. Nonetheless, you also can't penalize another team from another conference because of what Indiana scheduled. You know what I mean? Like you can't sit there and you can say, well, Indiana shouldn't be penalized. Well, Army's a bad example, but an SEC team that had a tougher schedule, it may have 2 losses or 3 losses. You can't penalize them for Indiana's schedule. I don't think Indiana, and go through the list. Look at the CFP. Go through the list and look at the teams that are in the top 20. And you tell me how many of those teams in the top 20, if I said gun to your head, that's violent. But if I said gun to your head, you've got to make a money line bet. Are you taking Indiana or this team? You're not taking over Oregon. You're not taking over Ohio State. Just start going through the list. You're not taking over Texas. And tell me how many teams out of, say, the top 20 that you would take Indiana over on a money line, just straight money line bet, and feel confident. Because there's not many for me. Indiana will get into the playoff if they're 11-1. They absolutely will, no doubt about it. I don't think they're one of the top 12 teams in the country. I don't think they're one of the top 11 non-group of 5 teams in the country. All right. It's Michigan week. Big Ten title on the line for Ohio State this week. The Michigan game is a special thing for me. I'm 53 years old. Since about the age of 5, I think 5 is when I probably got baptized into Ohio State, Michigan. And I remember going to Beat Michigan parties. That's what they called them, Beat Michigan parties. Not Ohio State, Michigan game parties, Beat Michigan parties. I remember going to these as a kid. And all these adults so invested in this game emotionally. And it certainly affected me. Like it was a mood-altering game as far as if Ohio State would win or lose, good play, bad play, whatever. But it would change the tone of the party. So, I understand, I embrace, I appreciate, I love the significance of this rivalry with Ohio State and Michigan. So, and there's big plays on both sides. There's obviously, there's Anthony Gonzalez catch is a big one. The Maurice Hall touchdown is a big one. There's all these different big moments in Ohio State, Michigan history. Art Schlichter running around the right. I can still see it in my head. Running around to the right side, scoring a touchdown on a run in the 14, I think it was 14-9, if I'm not mistaken. 14-9 Ohio State win over Michigan. So, but there are big moments. There are weird names. Biaka Batuka still pisses me off. But you'll hear Desmond doing the Heisman pose. All those things happen. But it is such an important game in my life. And here I am, about probably 48 years after I got indoctrinated into the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. So, let's talk. Ohio State wins. They go to the Big Ten title game against Oregon and play in Indy. They lose. God, that can't happen. They open up as 23.5-point favorite, the biggest spread that they opened up with in Ohio State-Michigan history. I think the second place was the one during the COVID year when Michigan chickened out and claimed they couldn't play because of COVID. Let's look at some stats. Michigan's 3 quarterbacks they've used this year have combined to throw for 1,518 yards, completed 61% of their passes, and Ohio State, Will Howard on his own, has thrown for 2,685 yards, 74% completion rate, and has 26 touchdown passes. Huge advantage Ohio State there. Now, the running game is where Michigan's going to try to establish a running game and try to control the clock. That's what every team does when they play Ohio State. The top 2 running backs for Michigan have combined for 1,410 yards, 5 yards a carry roughly, and 15 touchdowns. Ohio State's top 2 running backs, Judkins and Travion Henderson, have combined for 1,489 yards and 6.4 yards a carry. So, Michigan is going to try to establish a running game and keep Ohio State off the field. Michigan scoring 23 points a game, allowing 21.4. Ohio State's averaging 37.8, allowing 10.7. Big difference there. Michigan's averaging 4.9 yards a play on offense, allowing 5. Ohio State's averaging 7 yards a play, allowing 4.1. So, Ohio State's got so many statistical advantages in this game going in. what Ohio State does to teams, and like I told you, Michigan's going to try to establish the run. That's what they're going to try to do. But because Michigan can't pass the ball well, what happens is teams fall behind to Ohio State, and by the half, it could be a 3-score lead for Ohio State against Michigan, forcing Michigan to throw if they want to play to win. The Silver Bowl defense is legit for Ohio State. Sonny Styles has 4 sacks. Cody Simon had 2.5 against Indianapolis. Jack Sawyer's got 4.5 this year. JTT has 6 sacks for the season. They are applying so much pressure lately. The Silver Bowl's defense is going to wreak havoc on Michigan. And so they're going to apply a lot of pressure. That's what they're going to do. Ohio State, Indiana came in, I think they'd allowed 11 sacks in 10 games, and Ohio State had 5 sacks against them. The defensive backfield for Ohio State, Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom. Look, Lathan Ransom and Cody Simon have been absolute beasts the last couple of weeks. And Lathan Ransom, I love this kid. Lathan Ransom, excited about this game, and I think he'll have a big game in this one. Ohio State on offense is starting to really utilize Carnell Tate. The last 3 games, Tate's got 14 catches, 176 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You've got Ibuka still doing what he does. Jeremiah Smith, who didn't have a great game against they didn't have a great game against Indiana, but still is a threat that is now getting guarded more closely. And Ohio State, by the way, the special teams are causing havoc. They had the botched punt snap against Indiana, had the botched punt snap. Caleb Downs had a 79-yard punt return for a touchdown. He's only returned 9 punts in his career. He had 5 at Alabama, 4 at Ohio State. So 9 punts he's tried to return in his career. He's averaged 21 yards per punt return, which is amazing, and has 2 touchdowns. Think about that. 9 returns, 2 for touchdowns. So, because they had an 85-yarder last year for Alabama, then the 79-yarder against Indiana this past Saturday. All right, not all great news for Ohio State, though. 4-star, but let's back up a little bit. The offensive line, I know still a work in progress, if that's something you can say in week 12, or week 13, I guess it is for this. I thought Ohio State's offensive line was good, and I expect more of it. And I'll give you a prediction on the Ohio State-Michigan game. I think Ohio State wins by at least 3 touchdowns. And by the way, that's touchdowns and extra points. Ohio State, the line now is 20.5. Give me Ohio State laying that number all day long. All right. Now, I just said not all great news for Ohio State. A 4-star 2025 defensive end has decommitted. London Merritt appears to be headed to Colorado. He had committed to Ohio State. He's a 6'3", 250-pound defensive end. And around springtime is when he committed to Ohio State. And then he visited North Carolina and spent time at Colorado as well. Looks like he's going to Colorado. Zahir Mathis is another one who Ohio State had, who also committed and now decommitted. Ohio State still has 4 defensive linemen committed in the 2025 class. And they've got 3 guys coming in this weekend for the game. 2 of them have committed somewhere else. One was Penn State's Chaz Coleman committed to them. UCLA's Epi Citinelli has committed to UCLA, but they're coming in here as well. And also you've got Jakeem Stewart, who is uncommitted so far, coming in for the game. All right, let's transition briefly to Ohio State basketball. The men's team, they're coming off a big win over Green Bay. They won 102-69. Second straight game over 100 for the Buckeyes. They improved to 5-1 on the season. And Ohio State in that game, you had 7 guys in double figures. Devin Royal had another double-double. He had 10 points and 11 rebounds. Bruce Thornton had 25. Bruce Thornton's such a threat in this for Ohio State every game. Sean Stewart had 11. Micah Parrish had 10. B.T. Johnson had 17. You had Evan Mahaffey with 10, and also John Mobley Jr. with 14 in that game. As everyone gets in again, Ohio State gets a big win there. Green Bay is coached by Doug Gottlieb, former basketball player for Notre Dame and Oklahoma State, and also hosts a radio show still, even while he's coaching. They came in with Anthony Roy, and he was averaging a nation's best 28 points a game coming in. scored 30 in that game. He was 10 for 16 from the field, 8 for 12 on threes. So he played well, 6'5" guy. He's a scorer for sure. I think it's his 5th college in 5 years. Nonetheless, Ohio State does get the win. There's still no Aaron Bradshaw for Ohio State. Missed that game as well. And now, according to Columbus Dispatch, it's because Aaron Bradshaw is being investigated for a domestic incident at his off-campus apartment. We'll see what happens with that. But it'd be nice to have him back. It'd be nice to have him playing because Ohio State's going to need his size and his girth in the paint for Ohio State to have any kind of chance of making an NCAA tournament run. Next up, coming for Ohio State, they host Pitt on Friday. And Pitt's going to come in with a 6-1 record. They've got wins over West Virginia and LSU, but they're coming off an 81-75 loss to Wisconsin. The Panthers have some pretty good guards. That'll be fun to see how OSU's backcourt matches against Pitt's backcourt because Ohio State's got a great backcourt with depth and talent, and Pitt does have a decent backcourt. The 5-0 OSU women, they're 9th in the coaches poll. They're 11th in the AP poll. They beat Bowling Green 96-53, the 4th time getting over 90 in a game. But still, no Cody McManus's second game in a row with an injury. We'll see what happens with her. But in that game against Bowling Green, you had a bunch of Buckeyes in double figures again. You had Ava Watson with 20. She had 20. I'm sorry, I'm looking at stats here now. Kennedy Cambridge had 10. Chance Gray had 18. Cambridge had 17, and so did Taylor Theory with 17 as well. So the Ohio State Buckeyes women's team is rolling. They head to Daytona Beach, Florida, for the Daytona Beach Classic, taking on Old Dominion on Thanksgiving, and then they've got on Thanksgiving they have Old Dominion and Utah State on Friday. They get a bit of a break then until December 8th when they take on number 15 Illinois in the shot. All right, we'll talk again after the Ohio State-Michigan game. This is such a huge week, and I recommend, look, that you can go on YouTube and find this. It's called The Rivalry, about Ohio State versus Michigan, and it's about an hour long. But it's a wonderful, I do it every year. It's like one of my traditions every year is to watch this show. I watch it 3 or 4 times during Michigan week every single year, and it's well done. Former players are on there. Archie's on there, obviously, for Ohio State. But former players, there's a lot about the Woody and Bo relationship. All of that's on there, though. So go check it out. Find it on YouTube. And look, I got to believe we're talking about a Buckeye win next time we communicate. Ohio State takes on Michigan this week. It's the game. Ohio State win gets them in the Big Ten Championship against Oregon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Follow me on the X, @FitHappens. @FitHappens on the X. Would love to hear from you as well. And some of your Michigan-Ohio State week rivalry traditions you may have. Would love to hear those as well. But make sure you download the FanStream Sports app. Free for Apple and Android users. Go check it out. FanStreamSports.com is where you need to go. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll talk again soon. Go Bucks.